We'll reopen the Board of Selectmen's meeting for Monday, March 5th. Would you please stand and honor America with our pledge?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
As usual, we'll start the meeting with any public questions, public input.
According to minutes of November 6th, 2017, the Selectmen took $350,000 of the unexpended fund balance to reduce taxes for the upcoming year. Is that correct?
Right. Yes.
The reason I asked the question is that in the candidate's profile in last week's Granite State News, there was a candidate that alluded to, and I quote, "The past year, the Selectmen took $350,000 out of the undesignated fund balance to offset overspending." Would I interpret that as being a mistake on somebody's part?
Mistake on whoever said that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Well, and I guess what I would say is we can't overspend by law. We can spend no more than is approved at town meeting. So
I would have not brought it up if there's so much misinformation that floats around out of the public, real and or fake news. And I would hate to think a member of the community that read this candidate's profile would think that that was the case. I know it wasn't, but I just want to make sure it was on the record, the video, and in your minutes.
Was that at the candidates forum?
Pardon me? No, this was in last week's Granite State News.
Oh, isn't this?
this was a
This was a
the
candidate
submitted
profile.
candidate profile thing, right? Where
Yeah.
they, yeah.
Candidate profile, but
So
There's no editing of that. So
you can't change someone's answers.
it's a series of questions that they submit an answer to. Is that right? And
Yes.
it's published in the
You
Granite State
might
News.
change grammar, but.
As I said, I just want to make sure that the public understands the Selectmen do not overspend the
You
budget.
know, if we overspend, we violate the law.
Thank you. That's all I need to say on that.
All
They
right.
yell and scream and throw things. Maybe we get above the fold on the front page.
Lloyd did.
Did he? Did he throw things?
He didn't have to.
Oh, all right.
He went to Canada this time. You were on the top of the phone.
What did they do?
Oh, no, that you're.
As long as I'm not in the court news.
No, I thought the article
Or
on
no
you and Bob McWhirter was.
No problem. It's all good.
I thought that was the week before.
Get the paper.
Shame on you.
Thank you.
Don't ask to be top of the poll if you're not going to read it.
All right.
Yeah.
I just look at the front page.
Okay, we'll move on to transfer station update. Clay, come on down. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'll give you one.
Relatively simple today. The totals for February were 7 solid waste compactors, 5 CD containers, and 2 plastic containers. We also sent out 1 pup trailer load of scrap metal, 8 tons, $610 of revenue. We got $85 a ton for that. And we sent out a trailer load of OCC 23 tons of cardboard, which we got $2,519 of. After totaling up all the totals from 2017 and getting the final weights for December, we came out with the avoided costs for 2017, which I gave you all a chart of and the budget committee a chart of. The avoided costs are $33,987. The cash revenues we had for 2017, it's wrong on the notes there, 2017, not 18, for 101,690. The total net worth of the transfer station as far as cash and avoided costs, you add the two together, it's $135,677, which is a significant improvement or increase over the previous year and the year before that as well. A lot of that comes from cash revenues from more CD being done, so it's understandable why it's gone up like that too. All of the transfer station employees, with the exception of myself, attended LRPC over in Meredith for 2 specific classes. So they've gotten 4 hours of training requirements, which are our annual training requirement. So everybody at the station has met their annual training requirements. I will attend the conference for NRA down in Manchester in May, and that will complete mine. So by the end of May, we'll all have all of our annual requirements done. I also prepared, which Dan asked for, is the next Tufton Road Times edition. I have a copy of it here if you're interested. In it, what I did was I separated out upcoming events, so there'd be a little more heads up, and I got it in there early, so it'll be in the spring edition prior to the summer edition, specifically for Island Day, for hazardous waste collection, and for controlled medication collection. Just to get people informed, this is what day it's going to be on, and more specific details to come out. But that way, we keep people a little better informed a little earlier out. And last, I completed and sent in the annual transfer station facility report to DES. It was due March 31st, and I got it in the end of last month. And that was copied, checked out, and it's on file here in the town office.
Any questions or comments from the board?
So you did make your payroll,
Yes.
because you're,
Pretty close. Yeah, we're still a little bit, we're a couple $1,000s short. I added up all the lines, and that's the lines that I control on my budget, not the benefits.
right,
It's just the actual pay.
yeah, I was coming up with 130 grand, but maybe I was doing it quickly. So it's pretty close though.
Right.
I'll pass
So we're getting there. I'd like to have it a little bit more next year too. That's a little bit deceiving, like I say, because the more CD you have, the more revenue you're gonna have, so. So but you can always make numbers look good for you.
Well, and hopefully when we get to the scale system, we'll
Actually.
level that out.
Exactly, yeah.
I have a compliment to
Okay.
pass on to you that has to do with the company that hauls your metal, which is your
Right.
heaviest commodity. They said, thank you for calling them before the votes got posted by the state.
Right.
Otherwise, they were.
Right, yeah, we got a little bump, we got about $15 a ton more, and that's gonna shut down because a lot of places can't get their stuff out,
Right.
or won't be able to get their stuff out for another month and a half, so they like it to get that, if you can get it out earlier. It's a 50-50 toss because there's snow in there too, and I'm gonna look at doing a non-ferrous run here, probably in the next couple weeks. I think the prices are probably as good as they're gonna get for a while, so. All depends on the NAFTA and trade talks.
Well, aluminum should.
Aluminum just spike.
Yeah, and steel. Right.
Yeah, it'll probably go the other way if everyone else, right?
Thank you, Clay.
Yep.
Thanks.
You have a great day.
All right, you too.
We have a few minutes before the road agent gets here. Let's go to review and approval of minutes. Item number 1 will be the Selectmen's meeting, 9 a.m., February 26th. I have nothing to change.
I'm just, on page 3, paragraph 4, the following correspondence is how it starts.
Yes?
And the last sentence, summary of warrant articles with DRA pre-review comments. And I'm just wondering about pre-review. I think review is gonna work. I don't even think there is a.
That was at the
What
preliminary
would-
stages
What
before
would
she.
constitute a pre-review?
No, that's just the title of the document. It's like
They
a-
titled it?
Yeah. It's the
Really? So I
title.
have to take it up with them?
I guess so.
Fine.
Anything else?
Move approval.
I'll second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. We also have a couple of non-public. The first one will be the 10:50 a.m. I have no changes.
I move approval.
I'll second.
I'm sorry, I was reading.
Go ahead.
Okay. I'm gonna move that we unseal it, but we'll do the approval first. I
Okay,
guess.
all those in favor of approving, say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. You have a motion.
I have a motion to unseal these minutes.
I'll second it. Any discussion? Ready to vote? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. Next will be the 11:07 a.m. I have no changes.
I'll move approval.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Do we have any others?
That's it, I think.
That's it.
Okay. Running a little bit ahead of time. Let's go into the red file. Signatures.
Excuse me. I have if you want, where the library septic's, just a suggestion recordings here, I don't know.
Yeah, I was gonna mention.
Okay.
Whatever you think. It's in the front of correspondence.
Okay.
I should have put it on the agenda, but
Correspondence.
Okay, the next item is septic replacement for Tuftonboro Free Library. Will you come forward? You have some.
thank you.
As you requested last week, for my concerns, I contacted Andre Close from up at Fallon.
Would you read the response into the record for us, Gordon?
I'm happy to.
Okay, so this has been, he sent you a response?
Yes,
Okay,
this is his email.
so this is just yours?
So the 1, 2, 3 were your questions, and then
Exactly.
underneath it is his response.
That's correct.
Okay, perfect.
But somehow I'm being a Luddite when it comes to my iPad. I cannot print them in red as they came to me.
I'm thinking about setting up a group of Luddites.
Okay,
Wear funny hats.
I will share.
Hopefully nobody's.
If you don't have an iPad, can you go in that room too?
Well, you got a cell phone, you're out, but you're done.
So what I did was I said, as you can see from the plans, we know where the new septic system is to be located. With that in mind, I have a couple of questions. Number one was, will the installation of the new septic system adversely affect the rest of the quote-unquote dirt work involved in the project, as well as doing the footings and the slab? His response was, if the line is run where shown, it appears to be far enough away from the building excavation to not create any problems. Please ask the site work contractor doing the work to stake the pipe and tank so we can identify the locations when we get started. We will take steps to protect these areas during the construction. My second question is, by doing the system first, do you think there will be added aggravation and/or expense to the job? His response was, there shouldn't be any significant cost added to our work if the piping is buried below frost line, good fill is used, and the backfill is properly compacted. One other consideration that should be looked at is how we plan to run the waste line from the addition into the tank. Will it need to be pumped into the new tank? At what elevation will it enter the new tank? The mechanical and the engineer and SMP should weigh in on this before the tank gets ordered. I have a call into Anthony Mento from SMP, and we'll discuss that later today. My final question is, what would your recommendation to the selectmen as to whether to wait or proceed as soon as the weather breaks? His response was, in an ideal world, we would do the building site work first, but to prevent the holding tank from having to be pumped so often, I would say go ahead with the installation sooner than later. Hope this helps. I'll follow up with another email once I hear back from SMP. A copy of the SMP email. This is from Anthony Mento of SMP. They said attached to the conceptual drawings we did back in 9/13/2017, proposing where the septic system could be located, along with a state-approved septic design from Folsom Design Group. The site is relatively flat with the tank buried below grade, so we assume the lines in would be gravity fed into the tank. The septic field is higher than the tank, so FDG does not show a pump in the tank out to the field.
Does show.
I beg your pardon?
Does show.
Does show, excuse me. This design has the tank much closer to the building than we anticipated. Too bad in a way, it's adjacent to the main entry. Hope there will not be a vent pipe coming out of the ground. I don't think you don't generally vent the tank, you vent the field, I believe, so I don't see that as a problem.
Any questions from the board? So what is their recommendation?
My recommendation?
Yes.
My recommendation is the fact that we should proceed, then proceed. We do not have to wait the anticipated March 15th, perhaps to June 15th before we want to start doing the total project. We're anxious to start being able to flush it well, as well as everybody else.
And uses things.
And use the sinks and that sort of thing. My concern, he addressed my concerns, and I assume my concerns were the same concerns the selectmen would have had. So,
And my understanding is Jack has gone through all of the bids to make sure the specs conform with
Yes.
what we need to have done.
His recommendation was to go with the least expensive one.
They're all local, so I'm fine with
Yep.
that.
we're all around.
Yep. I guess the only question I have, and maybe this would be for Jack, is Anthony raised an issue of where the tank is located and if that can be adjusted as it gets installed so that it would be further from where the potential entrance might be. So
Then we need to get a hold of Folsom, because that's a design change. You can't just do that. But that's something we can do
Right.
after we.
Right.
I don't think it's gonna affect
The cost.
the cost.
Or-
Well, you dig a hole here, you dig a hole here, it's the same cost, right?
Right, it's the piping that's gonna be different, but I don't think that.
you take a piece of pipe from here and move it over. But you're right. Any change to the design has to get blessed by
Right.
DES, or what's the purpose of having an approved design if you're not gonna build to it?
Right.
Yeah.
What action would the board like to take today?
Well, I'll move that we award the bid today, subject to the.
Approval of town meeting, right?
Now, it's my understanding this is the lowest one, correct?
That's, I believe you're right, yeah.
Okay.
Right.
I have here, the lowest proposal was Laner Excavation of Wolfboro Falls, and the proposal is for $13,982. Is there a motion?
I move that we approve, oh, no, you already moved it.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I'll second it.
My motion to include the price of $13,982.
982.
Right. And I do think we want to review the location of the tank before the work gets started. You know, and if it
Move
If
further
it
away
did-
from the door.
what's that?
If it can be moved, then perhaps it should be moved.
Right, right. I mean, this was in my view, a legitimate concern that the design guy raised. So before we do an install, we gotta.
I second your amendment. Okay. Any further discussion? On his amendment is,
I think we had a question over here.
No, this tank would.
All those in favor of the amendment, say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes 3-0. All those in favor of awarding the contract to Rayner for the stated price, say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes 3-0.
Before I leave your table,
Yes.
will you now then be adjusting the $30,000 warrant article to town meeting?
On the floor, right.
And we should also redo our math for the library warrant article based on these numbers. Right.
Depending upon how firm you think those numbers are in there. I mean, you have, your estimate includes,
$30,000.
oh, is it 30,000 for
Yeah.
the septic? I thought it was just all the site work was all together.
Well,
Yeah.
I'll follow up on
Yeah.
that, but I would still say that'd be a safe figure.
Sure.
Well, this vote may never come up. I mean, because
I hope it doesn't.
first.
Well, that's when you come up, and hopefully it becomes a moot.
Right.
So,
We'll leave that up to the moderator.
oh,
But we have Jack scheduled for 9:35.
Oh, Jack Whitmer.
We have,
Oh,
come on down.
Jack,
Next will be our highway department, Jim Bean.
Morning.
Happy spring, sir.
A little early, but it
put
does
on
feel
the
it.
mud on Wednesday, right?
Yes, no, yeah. So far this year, since January 1st, we've actually had to plow or treat roads 34 times. And during this last month, we've been trying to maintain the potholes and the dirt roads as well. It's just, the mud season just came way earlier than normal. And the warm and cold weather that just keeps going back and forth, it's not helping the roads at all this year. It's really tough
Are
on
the
them.
roads posted?
They're being posted as we speak. The guys are out putting up signs. We've had to treat this, plowing the street.
Yeah.
There's actually more snow up in the higher elevations than down here. And basically trying to maintain the dirt roads, potholes, and we've been hauling in the sand for the winter stockpile, which I think we're all set with now, but we went through so much this year, we had all we could do to just keep up with it. And that's it, since last month.
I saw a subdivision that was going to go through or was planned for the planning board on Phineas Graves Road. Is that going to require us to do a little more work on Phineas Graves, or do you think that's a good through street for?
Well, that's a good question. There's always work to be done on a dirt road.
Yeah.
That's never a big battle, but, we have been trying to maintain it on a regular basis, just cleaning up the ditch lines and whatnot. How big of a subdivision? we
I don't
talking?
know, you may want to chat with Selectman Marcus, and I think, and this was just, I heard it on the street, so.
Okay, we haven't seen anything yet.
Okay.
That may be the one that's,
So if it does come up, you may want to go to the planning board meeting and just figure out what, it may only be 2 lots, I have no idea.
Okay,
It's
yeah, that would be nothing.
But it
That
could
would
be 10.
right.
Yeah, I mean, off the top of my head, I'm gonna say, I don't see anything huge that needs to happen. But we could certainly look into it just to, verify that it's not 10.
Anything else? Go ahead.
So I went to presentation on, over at Lakes Region Planning last Tuesday on the road surface condition survey, which we put money in the budget to have them do this year. I think it looks to me like it will be helpful to us. What they do is they go through and they look at quarter-mile segments of each paved road, and they evaluate them for a number of attributes. And it's a visual evaluation. So they're out there, they're looking at things like longitudinal and transverse cracking, alligator, edge cracking, patching potholes, drainage, ruttage, and frost heave severity. So they go through and they gather all this information, and they're inputting it into a database as they drive the roads. I think they said it's a whole protocol they follow. They, travel slowly one direction and then another, maybe they go over them like 3 times or something as they do this. And this information they then put into the road service management system database of the states. And where I think the real benefit is you get it in this model, they can evaluate the roads against like a dozen different treatment options. And before they do the evaluation, we would want to say, well, we don't do these things in Tufton Road. Here's the way that we treat, crack seal small cracks, crack seal large cracks, those kinds of things. Some of the different treatment options for roads, I'm not aware that we do. Anyway, up front we can select that.
Okay.
And their model, based upon the type of treatment we do, the condition of the road and the type of treatment we do on it, will give us projected cost to do that work, plus it ages them going forward. So it brings the road from the current condition up to some higher condition, and then ages it going out, so you can project out years in advance and say, well, if we do a crack seal now and things continue along based upon the other attributes, then 8 years from now we ought to recommend you do this, that, or the other. Once it's all in the model, we sit down with them and we can play what if, so that
Does that model become ours at that point?
no, that model belongs to the state, and we don't have direct access. LRPC is a user, so we'll sit with them and go through it. But they have the ability to say, well, let's instead of doing this, let's do this here and see what that does. So it gives you conditions at various points in time in the future for individual roads and then the road system overall. So we can, and there's a grading system from 0 to I think it's 100. So you can look and say, all right, for all our town roads, currently the average is 65. And if we do this work, then next year it's going to be 70. Or if we don't do work, then next year it's going to be 55. Depending upon the work we do.
So is there an interaction? I mean, does this go on beyond the initial survey?
It does.
So there's
It does. So on an annual basis, I would anticipate that we would provide updated information on what we're doing to the roads, and then can sit with their individual and go through the model and do some tweaking, right? So it's going to recommend various types of road treatments at particular time intervals, but if we choose to do it in a different treatment at a different time, we'll put that into the model, and then it goes forward from there. So the information that they will need up front from the town is traffic volumes.
Yes, that was my next
Okay,
question, was
so-
do they take that into consideration?
Yeah, very much so.
Yes.
Traffic volumes, importance of the road to the town, because,
They're all important.
well, of course they are, but in terms of priority for making sure that they're in top shape. Some of the things that, the better we can provide them information, the more helpful it is. Location of frost heaves. So that's something that,
Need to be doing that.
yeah, you need to be doing that, because when they come survey in the summertime, they're not going to see the frost heaves.
Yep.
So I'm guessing off the top of your head, you have a pretty good idea where frost heaves are. But if your guys, as they go around now, can just sort of make a note as to where they're at, so we have a list, that would be helpful too.
If it would help you at all, I have people who take pictures. I take them out and they actually take pictures of problem spots. And we also have access to a GPS.
Oh, yeah, that would be handy. Because in the past, sometimes what we do is I'll just drive 2 stakes and we'll make a pull point. If I know where we're gonna be digging that in the spring, if I know we're gonna be digging that frost heap out.
And the other information, as much as we can provide them in terms of paving history on the roads going in. And you have pretty good information on that, as I recall. Certainly back to when you took over as road agent, so.
Yeah, through the last 10 years.
Right. So if we can tell them on a particular road segment, hey, here's what happened to this. You know, in 2009, we did this to it. In 2011, we did this to it. Those sorts of things. Then when they're looking at it in 2018, as they do the survey, it will help in terms of kind of validating their model going forward. So it's, I think it will be a good, objective help to us going forward. Typically, you go around, particularly with FR Carroll and eyeball the roads, and you guys have a lot of experience with this stuff. But having a third-party set of eyes that doesn't have a dog in this hunt involved in picking the information up, I think is helpful to us.
Absolutely. Yeah, I like the idea that we'll actually have something a little bit more solid on paper for everybody to.
And then they generate, part of what they generate as an output is a map of all the roads with them color coded by condition. And I mean, there are ranges, you know, they're graded just like you'd grade a school test, if you will, you know, between 80 and 100 is green, and then they go down from there, and of course the worst are going to be color-coded red. But it will be the same type of maps that we got from them on the culvert survey, only this will just be color-coding the road segments.
I think that'd be great.
So I think, you know, anything we can get in terms of tools to help us do the job well is a good thing.
I agree.
Anything else?
The other thing that I wanted to mention is, it was talked about at our last meeting, is Class 6 road signage. Land Road at the north end doesn't have a sign, and I guess some propane truck got in there following a GPS trying to go down toward Federal Corner, and
We have one ordered.
okay,
I got the
you got the
voice message
Yeah.
about that, so.
Yeah, okay.
we're ordered.
Yep, and I'm just wondering out loud, on these Class 6 roads, we want to make sure that we have signage at each, at the end of town maintenance. Is it overkill to have a sign on both sides of the road as opposed to one side of the road? Just toss that out as a thought. Anyway, something to think about.
On Class 6 roads, we asked the police chief to look into when cars and plows that are going down these roads, and he's located one individual and asked him to stop plowing County Road. We had a citizen in, talking about when they do plow it, the water goes down, it goes on his property. I'm wondering, and a citizen asked me this, we post our other roads during mud season. Why can't we put a sign on our Class 6 roads during mud season, in effect saying, don't go over them? Because when people go over Lang Pond Road and go over County
We're talking
Road,
the Class 5 seasonals.
this
Right.
is they make ruts, and guess who has to repair them? If people just stayed off them for a month, it would be less work for you. And I thought the citizen had a good idea.
For most of them, not all of them, Lang Pond would probably be the exception, but most of the ones that we have basically are posted on the tar sections to get to them. So they'd have to go across the tar sections to get there to start with.
And the bottom of the sign says, pass at your own risk.
We put up mud signs usually on
Yeah.
all dirt roads, just same thing, pass it over.
I thought that was a good suggestion by the citizens.
Yeah.
So thinking back about that citizen, it didn't dawn on me when he was here, but if there's water going into his driveway or his house lot or whatever because of plowing by a vigilante plow guy, why isn't there water going, is there water going onto his property from the road in the summer or in the spring or in the fall? So if that's the case, should we be looking at the ditching there?
Well, I think the ditching is fine, but the problem is the person that plows it makes one swath down the middle, and now we have a luge for the water to go. It's not getting off to the
When
side.
it rains.
Correct, when it rains in the wintertime.
Comes down the hill.
And we've already got.
Because the water doesn't get to the ditches, you've got
Correct.
banks on it.
Where if we were taking care of it, the wings would reach out far enough that it would open up to the ditch lines. I think that.
So
is the
absent the
difference.
snow, we don't have a drainage problem
No.
up on County Road.
Yeah.
Thank you for your
Yeah.
interpretation.
Yeah. Yeah.
Anything else?
That's it. Me.
Well, thank you for making it through the winter so fast.
So,
Till Wednesday.
yeah, correct. Thank you.
Sure. We have a citizen coming in to talk about Class 6 roads if you want to hang around for a few minutes.
Okay, sure.
He's supposed to be in at 9:55. Next is our honorable treasurer, Jack Whitmer. Come on down. Hello, sir. How you doing?
Morning, Jack.
How are you? You also know this one.
Oh, you're in the witness protection thing, now they can't see.
That's the other,
Right, no one knows who he is.
That's all right.
So I invited the treasurer in for two reasons. One, to try to get some sort of understanding of the credit card situation.
Yeah.
And the other is the checkbook.
Yep. The credit card is the easy one to talk
Okay, let's
about.
do the easy one
Yeah,
first.
well, that's okay. In order to apply for a credit card, you have to have a person's name attached to it. You can't get one just under the town of Tufton, because you have to have somebody's name attached to it, which requires social security information, and they have.
So there's no corporate card available?
No. I've got the same situation at work. I've got four corporate cards. My social security number is attached to each one of them, and it goes on my credit report because that's the way it is. You can't get one under a municipality. I've looked, you just can't do it. I don't mind getting the process started, but if Jack's going to have, be responsible for a card, his information has to be on it. He has to have the security questions and all that stuff.
So we couldn't take the chairman of the select board and use that as the credit person and have Jack Parsons' name on the card?
You could.
Okay.
The problem is if the selectman changes, then the card is no longer valid.
Right.
So
So nobody ever runs for treasurer. I think like Jack Whitmer's credit's probably good.
How do we do it for the other department heads?
If you go back into, because I wasn't involved in the process when they got those cards, but if you go back in the process, you look at the application, Adam's social security number is on the card attached to it. The town's ID may also be attached to it, but his ID is that his birthday, all that information is on the application from way back when.
Well, I can tell you, going back 20 years or more, that was always the way.
Yeah.
You know, if you had a corporate card account in business, the individual cardholders' information was on it as well as the company's.
Correct.
So then we provide Adam with a guarantee of payment? Or
Well,
is this
yeah,
just a
yeah. I
handshake?
mean, when you're signing it as the selectment application or whatever, you're basically guaranteeing that it's going to be paid. But if the town for some reason doesn't pay it, the credit card company is going to go after the individual, and that's just why they have the individual attached to it.
Yeah.
It's really more of a personal guarantee than it is the town guarantee. The individual is guaranteeing that it's going to be paid. So
Again, it's not a big deal to get applications and get them done. It's just that you have to decide who's gonna be on it and, you know, whose information's gonna be out there. And I'm facing the same thing. I mean, at some point, I'm gonna retire. And all of these credit cards that are in my name at the business now, we're gonna have to be changed.
Is this the same for debit cards?
Debit cards are a little different. We can actually get a debit card in the town's name from Merritt Village Savings. The problem with the debit card is that that transaction happens right then and there, and you don't have a time to approve any purchases
Right.
because it's done. And you're not gonna get a separate credit card statement for it to sign off on. It's gonna be quite a bank statement showing the debit transactions on the bank statement.
And although it happens very rarely in our setting, a credit card offers certain protection if for some reason the transaction needs to be canceled.
Yeah, the debit card probably would give you some protection as well. But
And you can put limits on those.
Yeah, oh, sure, you could. And the thing is, you'd just have to really decide that, you know, a debit card is worth it. There's only gonna be 10 or 15 transactions a month. When the bank statement comes in, it would probably be after the fact, so you're gonna be recording the expense in the month prior to the expense actually happening. Probably because you're not gonna necessarily know all of those transactions until the bank statement gets in and you can reconcile those with the charges. You know, unless, I mean, you can set up a system.
Well, it'd be
where-
the same as a petty cash transaction. You have to bring a receipt in,
Yeah,
that sort of thing.
Yeah, no, and you could also set it up if you wanted to do a debit card, set it up, just like you do now, when you have a debit card transaction, the receipt has to be attached to whatever that transaction is. And it goes to the office and they can record it every day if they wanted. And then at the end of the month,
Right.
those would be listed on the bank
On the
statement,
statement.
and would have to be
Right.
checked off from the bank statement. So,
So I guess we need to, I mean, my feeling would be that we need to probably sit and have a discussion about how much we need credit cards or debit cards or whatever.
Now,
Device we need for.
we currently have,
purpose.
what, 2 out?
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, Andy has one
and Adam has one.
And where they have found that it's been very useful, I remember the last time we talked about this, is more and more they go to order something for their department.
Sure.
And it's none of this, we'll send it to you and send a bill. They need a credit card.
Right.
This has been in effect, what, 4 or 5 years?
Oh, sure.
And have there been issues as far as you can see?
No. I mean, everything's verified when the credit card statements come in, all the receipts are there to match up. So it's really never been an issue. And again, if somebody's ordering something online, and most of the time it's probably gonna be online today, it's not gonna be, you know, calling up on a phone, they're gonna go online and order it. They're gonna if they print out the receipt to match up to their credit card transaction, they can certainly print out the receipt to match up to a debit transaction. Doesn't make any difference. So the process is gonna be the same.
Yeah, and if we
It's just when you're recording it and when you're,
Yeah.
you know,
And if we were worried about security issues, I mean, certainly, we could set up another checking account, get a debit, you know, if we didn't want, if there was some concern that buying things online with the town checking account, which might have $1 million in it,
Exactly.
you know, puts that money at risk. for-
yeah, you could certainly
Yeah,
easily
thievery.
do that, set up a small account with
Yeah.
a couple of $1,000s in it, and you know, reconcile that strictly for
Have that
debit
just-
transaction,
right.
if that's what you wanted to do.
Well, we currently have a system that's in place and it's been working no problem. My thought would be we just expanded, there's another department head
Yeah.
who,
I think the big question came up when we moved from TD Bank, not TD Bank, from People's. The credit card says People's on it. Somebody says, well, okay, we're not with People's anymore, let's get rid of those credit cards and replace them with either a generic card or Merritt Village Savings Bank. Well, Merritt Village Savings doesn't do credit cards. They have a third-party processor, but it's all debit transactions. So you leave the cards the way they are, or you 3 new debit cards for the department heads and set up your little debit card process, however you want to do it. Either way, it's really not the volume of transactions is pretty small. It may expand as companies don't want to send a bill, but most companies that the towns are dealing with are dealing with municipalities, and they don't expect municipalities to use credit cards.
Different.
Well, and
Yeah.
it's interesting, as I sort of did an informal canvas with other towns to see what they do. There are two camps. There are some towns, there are no credit cards, no debit cards, everything's runs through the invoice system. And they don't have any problem dealing with people. And there are other towns that extensively use purchase cards, which is a credit card. My understanding is that it's a restricted credit card. So this department has a card they can use, but it only works for certain types of purchases. So, if I want to buy an airline ticket on that card, not going to work, kind of thing. So it's not a here's the way everybody does it. Some towns use credit cards. Other towns, it's like, no, we don't do it at all, and we don't have any problem that you deal with. Even in the internet world of ordering online today, that there are enough vendors out there that we deal with that it just simplifies it when it all goes through the invoice system. All the normal checks and balances are covered. The invoice comes in, it gets processed, manifest gets approved, and the whole bit. So it's.
I think as small as the transactions are here, as small as the town is,
we don't have a problem.
I don't think you'd have an issue anyway. If Andy and Adam are comfortable using a credit card or debit card or whatever, and I've seen nothing but all the transactions have been documented with receipts and all that stuff. If you want to keep that process going, standardize the process. Have one system, either credit cards or debit cards.
Mm-hmm.
Debit cards, again, are not a big issue. It's just how you record them. There's a little bit different process. That's all it really is.
Yeah.
But
All right.
to do that, I can start the process. If you want to look at debit cards, I can get with North Village and get the applications. I think they still have somebody's name on them as as the responsible party.
Right.
But it can come right through the type of town of Tuftonboro listed as the top, I think, with the individual's name on the bottom as postmasters.
Is the board willing to make a decision today? You want to think about it a little
Well, I
bit?
think we need to talk to our department heads and look at, if we're gonna change the system, we need to look at the historic purchases
Sure.
and what the needs are.
Okay.
Second topic,
Yeah.
reconciliation. What's the stumbling block here?
Well, there really isn't. I reconcile the bank statements every month. The issue apparently becomes with the few credit card transactions that we have, not very many compared to other types of transactions. But I reconcile every week when I come in. I reconcile with the tax collector, the town clerk, the selectmen give me for weekly deposits, and I verify those every week, and I have a separate Excel system that I make sure that all that stuff balances. At the end of the year, or at the end of each month, actually, Jackie gives me a list of all of her deposits for the month. I make sure they match my system, and I've checked those off against bank deposits. The issue with the bank statement and credit cards, it's kind of twofold. There's an issue with trying to reconcile the electronic deposits, because Jackie will list out the electronic deposits, and on her list, she does more than Heather does, obviously. The electronic deposits come in, And on the backup paperwork, which she keeps, I don't, she has every individual that was electronic and there's checks, cash, etc. At the end of the day, the front sheet says $10,000 of cash, $5,000 of electronic deposits. When the bank statement comes through, you can't find that 5,000 deposit. Because the 5,000 deposit can come into the bank in multiple
Oh, in increments.
increments. One customer one day, one customer another day. So all of a sudden, you're getting 8 transactions on the bank statement that you really can't identify. And all they say is electronic deposit. And there's no way to match those up.
You're talking about people that pay their taxes or their registrations with a credit card.
No.
No?
Not credit card, or electronic deposit.
Okay,
So in other words, if your bank is paying your tax bill,
right,
that's just an electronic transfer.
right.
So all these electronic transfers, we have a lot of those for tax bills, obviously. It's almost impossible to identify those on the bank statement. Once in a while, if there's one during the transaction, I can easily spot that on the bank statement because it's a one number that showed up as an electronic
But
deposit.
doesn't Jackie get a record of those electronic?
She can list them all out as electronically.
Right.
But how the bank records them, say the bank has, she gets an electronic deposit notification. And so she's got a whole list of 12 electronic deposits.
Yeah.
Well, when they actually hit the bank, they didn't hit as 12 deposits in the same day. They could have been 3 deposits in one transaction, 1 deposit the next day, 4 deposits the following day. So they're all over the place. So it's almost impossible to match them up. Not impossible.
Right.
Probably the way to do it is for me to set up a separate sort of sub-ledger. And using Jackie's paperwork, 'cause I gave her paperwork back to her that actually lists the individual deposits. All I get for my copy is the cover sheet.
So just to step back and say,
Yeah.
she doesn't reconcile her deposits against a bank statement?
No, that's basically what I'm doing is at the end of she's saying she sent to the bank $20,000 in cash.
Mhm.
But on her report was also $10,000 of electronic deposits. Right? She didn't send those to the bank.
Right, but she doesn't do any reconciliation of those?
She's
just gets the money.
she's recording those as just like somebody paid cash.
Okay.
But if, I guess if I kept the second page, which shows cash and electronics, and, because all the individuals are gonna be listed together, regardless of how they paid. It would be easy enough to set up a sub-ledger to record on this particular deposit, here's the electronic deposits. But then again, trying to match those up with what the bank
Right.
says and how they did it, would be a little bit of a challenge. It could be done, but a little bit of a challenge.
And this is a stumbling block for our auditors, I believe. It was the,
But it's been, I think the stumbling block was more on the credit card as it was electronic deposits. Because electronic deposits we've been doing for as long as I can remember.
right.
Credit card deposits are fairly new. We really haven't done those until the systems changed this past year and a half maybe. Not that many of them. They do show up on the bank statement as Heartland deposits,
Mhm.
but they are usually within a deposit that either Heather or Jackie has done as part of their electronic transfer process. So I don't see a separate transaction for those necessarily.
Yeah.
And I would just ask Diane when I came in, if I could look at a Heartland statement we don't get a Heartland statement. Well, if we don't get a Heartland statement, how can we reconcile what they've said they've deposited in our bank?
Right.
And again, this is fairly new, this year's the first time.
Is there an online statement? Is that-
I didn't even know we were doing Heartland.
Okay.
I mean, I certainly go online at work and download all my transactions, you can see everything.
Yeah.
But she said they don't even get a statement, they don't get anything from Heartland. So if they're not getting anything from Heartland, but Heartland's saying they're depositing money, where, how do you
Yeah.
piece it together?
Are they depositing all the money?
As far as I know. But are they, but,
There's
that-
no way
but
of
that,
knowing.
well, but that's the other question. Are they depositing, somebody uses their credit card to pay their registration for $300. Are we getting the $300 or are we getting $297 deposited?
Right.
Or $290 deposited because they're taking a 3% fee?
Right.
I don't know.
Right. And how do we need to account for the fee
Well, yeah,
somewhere
is it being?
as an expense?
Right.
Right, and I think the fee is added.
Well, I think the
Because
fee,
when-
I think the
when
fee
you
is
do-
added, but then if the fee is being added, how is it being recorded on our side?
Right.
Is it part of the deposit and then coming out as an expense on the other side, or is
Right.
it just being recorded as a?
Is that something you can work on with Diane and get back to us?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, I can certainly find out. I mean, the fact of the matter is, every month we, I do the bank reconciliations, print out the reports, they're all in the files, they're all there. The biggest question is, nothing ever quite balances because I record what the town clerk or tax collector gives me in a given month. But certainly at the end of the month, some of those electronic transfers maybe didn't hit yet,
Right.
but I don't know that.
Paid on the 30th, recorded on the 2nd.
Right, but on their books here, it's recorded.
The day that it's,
The day it's recorded in the system.
Did you have any other questions?
Yeah, one last one, if it's okay.
Yep, go ahead.
I think Northway was the lowest payment on that library
Yes,
note.
Northway, 2.3% for 5 years, 2.5 for 7 years.
Would you mind calling and asking for a current rate from them?
That is the rate.
Okay, even today?
Yeah.
Because I know there was a few months.
Yeah, no, in fact, I had mentioned that, I think, to.
You mentioned to me,
I
yeah.
mentioned to you, and I sent a copy in here. I called the bank and I said, can you give me the updated, so we have the right numbers when we go to town meeting? And they said the numbers are the same, 2.3, 2.5, 2.75.
Okay.
On that,
And I've got a payment schedule, so I can.
And all we need to do is, in fact, probably what we should do this, Eric, you can make a note.
Yeah, I'm sure, would you?
We need 2 years of audited statements, so 15 and 16 audited statements, and 2016 and 2017, the current new town report when it comes in. We need to send those 4 pieces to the bank. And probably the sooner we send those, they'll have everything that they need to
Right, okay.
sign the
I
paperwork.
think we have all that.
Yep.
We don't have the 17 audited.
No, they're looking for 15, 16 audited, because they knew 17 is not gonna be ready. But they are looking for 16 and 17 town reports.
Yeah, we can do that.
And that's it from that standpoint.
Great.
on that subject, I had 2 questions. We got a citizen sent in a couple of questions by email. And one of the questions was, after the board speaks with Jack Widmer, could they the board publish their intent as to what the terms of the financing will be and provide what the annual expense for the duration of the note will be? I think it is important for the voters to have that information prior to the vote.
Well, I think, I don't know where I saw that note as well, that I'm not certain where they expect we're gonna publish it between now and town meeting, but my hope would be that we could present at town meeting, there's gonna be a lot of discussion. We could present at town meeting what the proposed payment schedule would be. The final numbers, I mean, Gordon mentioned earlier that he's gonna look at adjusting the gross number depending on the cost of the septic system, which is now half as much money. So I think there's a lot of moving parts before we get to town meeting. But I think at town meeting, we can say, these are the payments, this is the rate, this is the effect on the taxes,
And,
you know.
and this particular conversation would be something good for us to do next Tuesday.
Yeah, we got all day.
We got all day, and, you know, we can sit down with the schedules and just kind of figure out.
How to make it simple.
Yeah, it's premature to, because the way I think the warrant article, and maybe it's not a warrant article, it's up to the selectmen after the vote to decide the proper financing terms. I think that's kind of backwards of what would normally happen. We sort of say, okay, we're gonna finance it for 5 years, and this is gonna be the payment schedule, or we're gonna finance it for 7. You don't really have to make that decision necessarily until after the vote, which is sort of backwards, I think. But I think it would be better.
Well, it is, but
having-
that's the way
But there are a lot of
these
parts to
things
it too. I mean,
are structured.
I
so-
might be sitting here a week after town meeting saying, a 5-year payment's the way to go, and this is how we're gonna do it, you know, tax-wise.
Right.
And undesignated fund balance-wise, and, you know, our track record on spending budgets. But we don't know, I'm not comfortable having that conversation before town meeting.
Right,
So.
right, and that's why, that's kind of why they leave it kind of open
Yeah,
there
right.
at the end of the day. You know, and, you know, the good thing with this is there's no prepayment penalties.
Right.
So if at some point you want to make an advance payment on principal, you can certainly do that. You know, I think there's a lot of areas there that are wide open for you.
Second question I had, a citizen asked me, if at town meeting,
Mhm.
the voters say, build this in 1 year, what is the impact on the tax rate?
Well, it's sort of the same question as, you know, what's the impact on 5 years or 7 years and all that? Because it depends on the current assessed value of the town. It's based on the fact that the buildings in town exist today, that there's no new construction going on, there's no remodeling that's going on that's going to add to the tax base, there's no changes ever. And that's a hard
Do
thing.
you pay for it in 1 year?
Yeah,
$2.
that's what you're saying.
I mean, I just off the top of my head, that's what I'm thinking, $2.
I understand this is not included.
Yeah, I think it's actually gonna be a little less than that. But, because I think.
It's a little over a penny per $10,000 of expense.
Right.
It's like .010 something
Right,
per $10,000 of expense.
right.
So
So
you get
so
$1
if
million
you're talking about
expense.
$1 million, you're talking about $100, or, you know, $1 to the tax rate. I think, you know, you're talking about a $300,000 house, if you paid it off in 1 year, $300, a $300,000 house, give or take. I mean, it could be a little bit more, a little bit less.
Yeah, I think it's gonna be a little more than $1,
Mhm.
but I mean, that's,
Yeah,
and
you know,
I'm
it's-
all for it, I'll
it's-
pay
it's
$1
hard to-
extra per 1,000 1 year, and then, but the argument then becomes, well, once you jack the tax rate up $1, it's gonna stay there forever.
Exactly.
And,
Yeah.
you know, I mean, I
There are
don't know
pros
if there's
and
any
cons.
evidence of that happening, but,
It's an interesting discussion.
yeah, and I don't know.
And again, both these instances were questions that citizens asked, so I bring them
Yeah.
forward.
Well, I think the hard part is, you know, you don't want to be locked in to say, okay, you know, somebody said it's gonna be $300, or somebody says it's gonna be $400,
Right.
because you don't know.
It's an estimate.
It's just an estimated number.
Yeah, we don't set the tax rate till October.
Yeah,
Right.
and when we talked about, you know, doing 7-year financing, I think the number on a $300,000 house for 7 years was about, I think $45 a year or something, over 7 years. That's what the interest and all. Now, somebody said, oh, gee, maybe that's a little high, or maybe no, maybe that's a little bit low. How do you know?
Right,
It's a guesstimate.
right.
Yeah. Total assessed valuation changes every year.
And again, if there's.
And
if-
individual
You
property.
can talk to Jack Parsons, if there's absolutely no permits for the next 7 years for new construction, well, you pretty much know where you're gonna be then as far as valuation. But I would hope that there'd be some new construction in town over there.
There was $10 million worth last year.
Well,
Really?
Yes.
Well, $10 million is gonna be added to the tax base, which is gonna
Yeah.
change the number that
Tax,
you're talking about.
yeah,
Based on what you
We
do.
didn't add $10 million worth of expenses to.
Well, exactly.
Right.
So-
Anything else for Jack?
Thank you for coming in. I'm sure.
thank you.
No, absolutely.
We appreciate what you do for the town.
Anytime, just give me a holler anytime you want to talk or anything. I'm good. Okay?
Okay.
Thank you, Jack.
Yeah.
The next item is Class 6 road, Skip Hurd. Thank you for being patient, Skip. Come on down. How are you today?
I'm fine, thanks. Thanks for taking the time to see me.
No problem. We had the road agent stick around
Yeah,
because it
great.
does with roads.
Yeah, good, I'm glad to see you. I watched the tape last week, and Adam asking about having the not through sign. And I didn't hear anybody, Bill started talking about putting signs up that said, pass at your own risk, Class 6 road, whatever. So I didn't really get the feeling that you guys were going to, get a not a through road sign put up on that section of Willand Road.
Sign's been ordered, hasn't it?
Yeah, that's exactly what I ordered.
Great, excellent, okay, super, because I think that's really what needs, because that section of road it's got a sign and it looks like a straight, yeah, it looks like a Class 5 road, and somebody turns on there, and if they say not a through road, they're gonna think, well, it sure looks like it, my GPS is telling me that, and so, maybe I'll make it.
Are you talking about putting not a through road out by 171?
Yes.
That's what it
Yep.
used to be.
That's what we end up having to do on North Line Dirt section because we had the same problem.
Yes.
Yeah, because sending people in trucks up North
We're
Line.
changing that over to Class 5, but didn't hear that.
Yeah.
Still not through road.
The next thing that I noticed when I watched the tape is that apparently you guys, you have some people that are plowing Class 6 roads or Class 5 roads or whatever.
Class 5s, seasonal roads.
Seasonal roads, right. Well, I didn't know if maybe you were going after them because you're under the impression that nobody can do it other than the town or the road agent. And so I got this information, and private parties can maintain and repair Class 6 roads, and all they need is permission from you guys, and you're under no obligation, or the road agent.
Yep.
And so rather than, if somebody wants to plow the road because, they live on it or they have a seasonal camp or whatever, they're allowed to do that if they get permission from you guys to do that.
Right.
I didn't know if you were aware of that or not.
Yes.
Yep.
That wasn't
And
the case, though.
that was not the case.
Yeah.
Okay.
Here.
Well, I'm going to leave you this
Yeah.
because this gives you an outline on some of the, by Susan Slack, who's an attorney, and some of you might remember her as the editor of the Granite State News. I don't know if she's still practicing or not. And then the final reason I was here is that I wanted to give Lloyd a chance to elaborate when he made the statement that Willand Road is too steep a grade to ever be reclassified as a Class 5 road. I wanted to know where you got that information.
I'll dig through my files and when I was on the budget committee, I remember the selectmen came in and mentioned 3 or 4 private roads that are not maintained by the town because of the grade.
Yeah.
But I'll dig through that.
Well, I've studied Class 6 roads quite a bit, and I have found no state regulations that say you cannot reclassify a road based on grade. And so when you're going to make definitive statements like that can lead to people taking action that can cost a lot of money. The only person that I ever heard say that was Dan Duffy to me when I was sitting across this table probably 5 or 6 years ago, and I didn't really want to, challenge him. But I think really that it should be stated unequivocally that there is, I doubt that any of you even know what the grade is on that section of road. Does anybody know what the grade is? Because I can
don't.
tell you the grade.
I've driven through there.
Yeah.
I don't know what the grade is. I am like you. I'm not aware of any any restriction on reclassifying
Right,
a Class
there is
6
none.
based upon.
And maybe the confusion came, I'm just gonna give everybody the benefit of the doubt here. There are local regulations, planning board regulations, about the grade of a newly constructed.
Sure, absolutely.
Not a class 6 road or a class.
Exactly.
So
That's
that,
correct.
maybe that's where the confusion came.
Yeah, I'm sure that's probably what it is, but it really should be, it really needs to be clarified. I mean, I can't have people operating under the assumption that roads don't meet. You can, and this is leading into the next topic, and that is if you want to form a committee and you want to come up with a policy on Class 6 roads, that would probably be a fairly responsible thing to do. I have a bit of an apprehension about it because I really don't want to deny anybody the opportunities I've had. So I have here, just to back up my statement that you cannot not reclassify a road based on grade. I have the policy for the town of Allenstown. You guys can load this down. I'm not going to leave this with you. I'll leave you this other one. This is another little bit more detailed information regarding, also by Susan Slack, regarding the reclassification of a Class 6 road to a Class 5 road, and also some of the statutory notices that you can give out, also on building permits that you might want to review. But this is the policy for the town of Allenstown, and they've decided that they will not accept a Class 6 road to a Class 5 road if the grade is 12% or more. Or they will accept it if it's 12% or less. Now, the grades, we do not have, as far as I know, any grade in this town that's greater than 11%. And the road that meets that 11% is, take a guess.
Around the Kena Valley.
That's it. Very good.
Thank you. I knew there was a spot.
Yeah. So Cane Valley has approximately a good 100 feet of road that's at 11%. Willand Road has two sections, approximately 20 feet that are 10%. And most of the grade is about 8%. And that goes for the Willand Road on the Camp Lawrence side, which the Willand Road on 171 side is in far, far better condition than the Camp Road.
It's the place in the middle that's the worst, between those two sections, as I remember.
Oh yeah, no, that's why I say you can put not a through road, because it's not a road, it's a path. It stops being a road at my house and it turns into a path. But you do have an awful lot. The unique thing about Willand Road is you have thousands of feet of lake frontage that is not accessible by a motored barge of any sort, because you have no public access.
Mhm.
So if you were to try to do anything drastic, I think you'd have a lot of really, I don't think it would be in the town's best interest to do.
Well, there are still summer cottages or.
There are several summer cottages, one's for sale for $340,000 and it has no, it's a shack that has no electricity. So you'd probably be hurting the town tax base somewhere. There's also some really good vistas up there as well. I do think it would be responsible to consider putting part of that road, and it doesn't have to include my house at all, but you do have 3 year-round residents on that road. You guys have issued building permits, they've all signed the release. I, of course, never signed any release because I moved on it 36 years ago, and I built the whole road, and I paved the apron, and it's not a problem, and it's no longer my house, it's in a trust. So, but I do think it would be a good idea to try to reclassify that too, if you want to mitigate the tax effect to the same as Lang Pond, where it's seasonal, Class 5 seasonal. That allows you to try to prevent any strip slums from developing, because really, once the rich guy at the top of the hill leaves and it's no longer plowable, and not maintainable, that road's gonna deteriorate. And what are you gonna have then? Decreasing valuations, more people are gonna wanna come in and buy them because they're poor and they can afford it. And unless they get lucky and start making a lot more money, you're gonna see the area constantly go lower and lower. This is one of the arguments for not allowing any development on Class 6 roads. But then again, you can have somebody like me that gets on there, gets lucky, and creates a benefit. So I'll let you guys decide. If you do decide to put a policy committee together, I hope you put me on that committee. 'Cause I think
Well, I certainly can't be on it.
you can't be on it.
And, you know, I've, aside from owning a couple thousand feet of road frontage on a Class 6 road, I've always held the position that if you want to save the backland, if you want to save the open spaces, then let's get rid of the Class 6 roads. Because building on a town road is a hell of a lot less expensive than building a development. But it also, you know, controls your growth to the road frontage as opposed to having house lots everywhere. But I think a Class 6, no matter what we would want to do or what a committee would want to do, you still have to go before the town voters to declassify.
Reclassify requires a town vote. But
We did that 10 years ago on a section of county road,
Yeah.
or there, give or take,
Yeah.
that there's now the seasonal section. Yeah.
yeah, I think if you point it out though, if it's, you know, I mean, it gets to be a pretty involved conversation, but I think if you're gonna issue building permits, you really should probably have some sort of an idea of how you're gonna transition. Sooner or later, you're gonna have.
Well, once you have 3 houses up there, you've transitioned
Yeah, they're
everything
gonna,
except for the road classification.
yeah, right, exactly, and if you're going to keep it in, you know, the intent was the roads were not used. There was nobody living on the roads, so why maintain them? And so now when you've got that cycle reverting, it's natural. You know. So that's it. Thank you very much. Thanks for coming in.
Thank you, have a good day.
Good job.
Let's go to signature file.
Thanks, Jim.
This is, this is paperwork concerning the April meter read. Are you familiar with it?
Yes, I am.
You want to speak on it briefly?
This was one of our power accounts that was clerically omitted when we went on the purchase power agreement back in October. So an addendum was done to add this account, and for some reason it didn't get done in the January cycle. So
This is on the new power purchase agreement.
this is adding an account to the purchase power agreement. And we've signed the addendum to have it happen in January, and for some reason that didn't happen. So they're looking to re-sign it, would be effective April.
Okay.
And this is an account, if my memory serves, that we really don't use any power in. So it's not like we're spending a lot more money today that we could be saving. But nonetheless, it is one of the accounts.
Okay for me to initial where it says initial?
I'll make a motion that we approve the addendum.
I'll second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes 3-0.
And I think that just requires your
Yep.
signature. Right, and
Well, there's a lot of
initials.
initial spots.
Yep.
Yeah.
Just-
I don't think there's any signature, but just
It
initial.
just says initial.
Yep.
Okay, great, thank you. Next is an applicant for lot 15-1-27. The applicant meets all the criteria. I recommend awarding a $500 standard veterans tax credit.
Move approval?
I'll second.
Oh, motion made and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. Next item is current use land change. It's for map 59-1-23. Have you folks read this?
Yes.
Have you read it?
I don't believe I have, I'm sorry.
Well, look at it.
Thanks.
No problem. Is there a motion?
I will move approval.
I'll second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes 3-0. Has to be in black ink.
There's 2 signatures required.
Yeah.
The second. Is there a second?
Oh, I think you're right. I think there's another place where we need to sign.
Yes.
Thank you.
The last item is the letter of appreciation for a member who is resigned from Conservation Commission. Karen, have we received documentation that this person has resigned?
Yes.
And we made a motion, but we tabled it merely for the fact of waiting for your verification, right?
Yep.
Okay. This is to Nancy Bird. I read the letter into the record last meeting. Both she and her husband are moving and have done a lot of conservation on their lake.
All right.
Anything else to be signed? Next, Selectmen's updates. You gave one.
Yep. A couple other things. I attended last week the emergency management work session, and I apologize, I don't remember the acronym, but this is it was a tabletop exercise, if you will, or a walkthrough of setting up a point for mass screening or mass vaccinations. There are, in the county, there are 3 locations that have this capability. One is here in Tuftonboro, it's a gymnasium at the Central School. One is in West Ossipee, and the third one is up in Jackson. And that's designed to cover all the populations in the communities of the town. That's there are pre-positioned trailers of equipment and such for each of those 3 locations. We keep one here in Tuftonboro, And the towns that are served by this southern location are Wakefield, Brookfield, Wolfboro, Tuftonboro. I think those are the 4 towns that are served by our location. Anyway, certainly a well thought out and structured approach to how you deal with the situation. I was impressed with the amount of thought and organization that's in there. As our emergency management director, Adam is the point person on all of this, and one of the things I did not have an appreciation for is to stand up and run one of these operations requires a large number of volunteers. When I talked with Adam and with the county emergency management director about it, they did identify that yes, having volunteers and having qualified volunteers is always an issue. So I'll just put it out there. Anybody that has an interest in stepping up to provide assistance in these situations, I would encourage you to make yourself known to Adam as it relates to what gets done in these mass screening evolutions. A lot of it is helping get people formed up for the entrance, checking people in on lists, helping them walk through what it is that they need to, where the next station is that they go. So a lot of the volunteers, I got the idea, you don't have to be, have a high level of training relative to public health issues or those sorts of things. It's just hands that are available and understand the basic how things go to make it happen. So anybody that's interested and willing to step up, and this is not something that happens on a regular basis. It would be something similar to the kind of evolution that we might do in the event of a bad storm. Although the focus of this particular type of thing has to do more with public health than with storm sheltering and that sort of thing. But
yeah, I remember when I was at the county that there was a pandemic of some flu virus, and we put in extra phone lines, set up a system so that the dispatch could expand to handle that theoretically, but it was in the delegation room. So there's quite a system in place there, but not to handle people, more to handle the coordination.
Right. Planning board is meeting this Thursday night. It was a rescheduled from our regular first Thursday meeting. My understanding is that there is a site application coming to the planning board. I haven't seen an agenda yet, and I will be out of town this week, so I won't be there. Anyway, another initiative that planning board is working on is getting the state gravel tax guru, Mary Pinkham-Langer, to come back and meet with residents in Tuftonboro. We have a handful of people that are that have pits, gravel pits, that are kind of in a largesse period before they have to come into full compliance with the state regulations. This is in accordance with the revised zoning ordinance that was passed last year. So a year from now, anybody that has been operating a gravel pit that doesn't have an approved site plan is gonna have to come forward with a site plan, get it approved by the planning board, and go forward from there. Now, the rub with that is there's significant costs associated with putting that together because of the surveying that has to be done, the remediation plan that has to be put together. So some of these small pits that have been around forever and used somewhat casually, the question is, what happens going forward? Is someone going to kind of put significant resources into having them be legal or not? So we're trying to arrange a meeting for her to come back and sit with folks and explore this whole issue. So that's all I have.
Well, it's sugar season, so I'm boiling maple syrup. Just making sugar from trees. But that did give me an opportunity to look at that request for abatement by the co-op. And it raised more questions than it certainly answered for me. Currently, they're at $10 million assessed value. Their book value after depreciation is $7 million, but I guess that's not good enough. So DRA has come up with a value of $4 million. If you run the math out, the $10 million assessed value pretty much comports with the cost of constructing a mile or 165 miles of power line. I mean, I knew from experience that that number divided into the 165 miles works out to about $66,000 a mile, which is a little less than it actually would cost the average developer to put in a mile of power. So the number is not that far off actual cash value for construction. They were nice enough to send their revenue figures along. I think they're limited revenue figures because I think there's some other revenue involved. But it works out to, if you just divide it up by the number of members taking power from Toftonboro, about $1,220 per member in electric costs, which is about $100 a month, which seems about right. And the actual amount of tax paid on that is $34 per resident, or somewhere under 3%. I mean, none of the numbers seem to spring out at me and think, Jesus, we're really killing the co-op, because they just open their letter up by talking about how they're member-owned and a nonprofit, et cetera, et cetera. But I was at the end of it, when I was almost burning this syrup I was boiling, I was trying to figure out what the actual tax implication would be, because I'm certain that they're not going to give everybody a $34 break on their power, because that's what the taxes that they're currently paying. So if they reduce the tax to $5, they're going to get the balance back to their customers, because they're taking $10 million off of our tax rolls at that point, or not. If they go down to 4, they're taking $6 million off our tax roll. That's going to increase everybody else's property taxes.
Right.
So it isn't a net gain by just not taxing the power company. And we passed this off to a law firm. Is that how we handle it?
Yes.
Yeah.
You want to talk to Chris Sansucci.
Okay.
He is the
George Sansucci.
George Sansucci.
Yeah.
He also just got elected selectman in Sandwich. I've worked on a couple of mediation.
You're talking about Chris Bolt, who's our
Chris
attorney.
Bolt, excuse me, I apologize.
Yeah.
George Sansucci is the appraiser.
Chris Bolt is the guru
Yeah.
on that,
And I don't see that there's been any resolution from the court cases.
the court case.
Every one of the cases that's been done has always been done in the favor of the towns
Yeah.
Yes.
and not in the favor of the utilities.
And there's appeal after appeal.
And my read on this is that, of course, every town does their assessing individually, which is the system that's set up in this state. So the way the assessment is done in towns is not consistent across all towns. And there, I believe, are some taxing jurisdictions that have some significant impacts on the taxes that the utilities pay, particularly, not necessarily the co-op, but the Eversource and so it seems to me it's become just a matter of course every year now, because there's been ongoing litigation and challenges and appeals for a number of years, that every year the utilities, until something is finally decided, we're going to file again against all the towns. As you say, with the co-op, the difference between where we're at and where they're at in the grand scheme of things is not huge.
Well, if you could determine where they're at, if they want to go to DRA, it is a pretty big
Right.
leap.
The DRA assessment model is very simplistic, and it probably takes about a 30-second calculation, and this is what it is. Time and again, as I recall, in the appeals and the court decisions, the more robust models that have been used to determine valuation have been identified in the decisions as being appropriate. But philosophically, I guess the question is, and we all get, those of us that get our power from the co-op, which is almost everybody in Tufton Borough, every once in a while you'll see in the newsletter an appeal to the customers to support lower assessed valuations on the utilities by the towns. It's a question is where, philosophically, where does the cost get borne? Does the person that benefits from the commodity that's supplied pay for it, or does the landowner in the towns that the utilities go through pay for it? Because as the assessed valuation goes down, the taxes collected by the town from the utility go down, so the taxes that everybody else pays go up. So as a landowner in the town of Tufton Borough, if the utilities pay less taxes, then I will pay more taxes to make up for that difference. And in theory, that reduced cost to them may reduce their rate, may reduce the cost that I pay to utility. However, the benefit that's accrued is accrued to the individual that uses the power. So if I use more power, then I accrue more of a savings if the tax is lower. If I don't use any power, it makes no difference to me. So it just, like with so many things, the cost of doing business ought to be borne by the individual that benefits
If
from
you
it.
don't use any power, it does affect you, because if the taxes go down on the utility, your taxes go
No,
up.
I'm saying as a ratepayer, as a user of the commodity, if I don't use any power at all, then the cost of the cost associated with the power I don't affect any savings. But as a taxpayer in the town, my tax is going to go up if what the utility pays goes down. I mean, there's a real benefit to the utility to having the poles and their infrastructure in the town.
Yeah, and when I was doing the math, I was just doing customers, miles of road, or miles of line. That's it. I didn't take into account the transition lines or transmission lines.
Transmission lines, yeah.
which
Substations
are
and, yeah.
feeding somewhere else. They're not feeding Tuftonboro per se very much. So, I mean, that's got a value to the co-op. But at any rate, that's,
Another person to was Bill Stockman. He became aware of the inequity when the lines, transmission lines were doubled from Transformer Hill to Ossipee, and it wasn't reflected on any
assessment.
the
Right.
and the utilities in this town 2 years ago we assessed them at about $14 million.
And they're down to 10 now. Yeah, so. Enough's enough.
Right.
Anything from our chair? Are you gonna be there on Tuesday, or you can't be there on Tuesday?
Yeah, I'll be there. I just can't stand anywhere near the.
How's that
He
work?
can be there to perform his normal function, which is to be the Board of Selectmen's meeting.
Right.
We will ask him to limit the time he spends within the polling place to just
Right.
voting.
Can't politic.
Yeah, right.
He's gonna have to stay in that room all day.
Yeah, under lock
You
and
can come
key.
in and,
I
yes.
have a couple things. First of all, the town report is out. Karen, thank you for you and all the people you work with. It's excellent.
You're welcome, thank you.
I was asked by the fire department, Chief Thompson, at town meeting day, do we need to have an extra room that's wired for sound in case there's an overflow?
That's up to our friend the moderator.
Yep. I passed
Well,
it on.
it's a joint decision. The selectmen are actually responsible for preparing the,
You have to
The hall.
demand it.
but I personally have seen, I haven't seen anything that suggests we're gonna see the kinds of crowds we got on one issue years ago when we had almost 700 people in the hall. I haven't seen anything that would indicate that kind of a crowd.
How hard is it to set something like that up?
How difficult was it last time? It can't be done on the spur of the moment.
No, there was, we had closed-circuit TVs in one of the classrooms, and I think we had a microphone in the old gymnasium, not certain of that. But we had people, if people wanted to speak, we asked them to come from wherever they were into the main hall. Kyle Williams has been doing a great job the last several years with the sound system. He would be the one I would suggest turning to if there was any suggestion, any thought that we needed this. You know, the capacity of the gymnasium itself, if memory serves, is 600 and something. Does that ring a bell with anybody?
I think it's somewhere around there.
Yeah,
That was
Adam
720.
would know,
Yeah.
but we haven't come close to that in the last couple of years.
Yeah. I think the old cafetorium's close to 300.
Mhm.
I remember what I saw on the door. Who separates the people by ethnicity? Does that happen? Or how they're gonna vote? You do that?
What's that?
You separate the people by how they're gonna vote? Put the nose in the classroom?
Yeah, we haven't, we've asked the neighbors to watch out for somebody who's not a resident
Good.
and prevent them from committing a felony, but that's been the extent of the separation.
Okay, well, it's a work in progress then.
Question. So are you saying you will have a room that has the closed circuit TV? Or you've had it in the
I have
past?
not, this is the first I've heard the suggestion.
Okay.
We haven't needed same for several years. There was only one instance in my recollection in the last 16 years that we needed that. So I mean, my answer to Adam would be, why?
Yeah, I'll pass that on.
Let me ask this. In Ossipee, they had a real problem with their beach vote, the vote to buy a beach, and they had to get 66 2/3. They usually have their meeting in their town hall. They had all these people in line outside who couldn't hear. and they were outside for an hour and a half in the cold because it was, I think, late November. And there were citizens who then protested and brought a lawsuit against them because they said they were not able to hear, they were not able to participate. So Adam might be aware of that. That might be
Yeah.
affecting his decision, but
Would you like me to stop in and see Adam and just to discuss it with him and see if he thinks there's a need? I could find out the capacity of the gym, that would be
Sure.
a key.
Yeah,
Sure.
key
Would you do
element.
that? Thank you. Okay. Nothing else from Selectmen? Let's go into correspondence. From Dan, spring edition deadline for articles for the Tuftonboro Times is Friday, March 30th. This is from William Marsh, one of our representatives, and I'll read it into the record. Dear Tuftonboro Selectmen, thank you for your recent letter regarding HB 1802. As you can see from the forwarded part of this message, I've already been working on behalf of the Molten Borough Selectmen in opposing this bill. Rest assured, I'll continue to oppose this bill and will support the ITL motion on the House floor. I do appreciate feedback from my constituents and hope you'll feel free to contact me in the future. That's from Representative William Marsh. Is everything here under correspondence, no action needed? Is there anything else?
Just those loose things that were in front, so, yeah.
Okay.
May I ask, who will, between the three of you, decide who's gonna write the spring edition? for-
I'll do it.
Okay.
Yeah, you're gonna be the chair. You gotta do it. Like we should have you do it every time.
Whatever.
Under other businesses, items in here, have you folks read them?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Other business, anyone? Hi, Joe.
I just wanted to say several years ago, I was involved in that. Dan should remember. Last minute, we need a 100-foot, 150-foot cable run down the hall up in the ceiling and put that cable into one of the classrooms. Since I've been up there recently, they have a whole array of cameras in the office, and I just don't know what parts of the school that they're watching. But if that systems already exist, maybe they have one in either the classroom, and they have one in the gym where they could just generate it across the whole thing. But that should be available. I'm not sure. But like I said, last minute stuff.
Yeah.
It was a Mickey Mouse deal, but we got it to work. I think people were able to talk from that classroom. So I just wanted to mention that.
Joe, do you know who's responsible for the maintenance of those systems at the school?
What's his name's not there anymore. He
Yeah,
retired.
Sparky, yeah.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
There's a young kid I met last year. I've got to go see him sometime next week or whatever. Set up a platform for me.
Chris Tibbetts,
Tibbetts?
maybe?
Yeah, young guy.
He's
Oh, yeah,
doing,
yeah.
he's doing the IT,
Well, Dave Cash is the janitor now.
Right.
Yeah,
the IT.
The head guy, I don't know, but
So
yeah.
It's a work in progress.
One, yeah, it's available.
Okay.
It's an interesting thought.
We go down and just talk to him, set it up.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Anything else? Go ahead.
Can you clarify what Skip was suggesting? That you reclassify a road. Was that a seasonal classification? I wasn't sure what he was suggesting.
I think
Well,
he's-
land is class 6,
Right.
Yes.
and
it
you're
is.
gonna make a sign, and he said he thought it would be a good idea to reclassify it.
They're
As a
now-
class 5, which is a maintained road.
Okay.
Because it's 3 per hour.
Okay.
Right.
Thank you.
And it's, whether it's appropriate to make it a seasonal class 5 or a year-round class 5, I think
Okay.
it bears review.
Yeah, I think we have
But-
residents out there who could make it seasonal. Yeah, but
if people are, yeah. And again, there are some camps off of that are clearly seasonal camps,
That's beyond Hertz.
which is what he's talking about, I think, the class 6 part down there to,
See, I thought it was well, I guess we're gonna have to take a view.
well, you know,
Because I thought it was
again,
across the street.
we can't
from
sit
that.
here today and make,
Right.
I don't think, and make an informed decision about whether it makes sense to pursue changing the classification on that road. Like so many of the class 6 roads, at one time, they were regularly used roads in the town. And then because the farms that were up there, whatever, went away,
Or burned.
you know, there was no need for their use. And some of these,
Original range road.
yes, some of these roads may never have been improved to the point where they were appropriate for vehicular traffic, okay? So, you know, you go through there on a horse, that's one thing. I can tell you from driving through on the land road, you don't want to do it in a vehicle that doesn't have high ground clearance, because there's some pretty big chuckles in there. Now, it's been probably 5-6 years since I've been through, but at any rate, it's,
You answered the question.
yeah, I think it's, certainly it always makes sense to look at the appropriateness of reclassifying and taking on the expense burden of maintaining them.
I wonder if any of you had a chance to review my modest concern about the order of articles in the town warrant.
I haven't reviewed them again since we talked on Friday. That was an order, as I recall, that was approved by DRA.
I think that Diane checked with DRA later on Friday,
Yeah,
and the general consensus was, because the bond article is not coming up first, if the bond article is not dealt on first, there is a possibility if we were to go to a bond bank, that they might have some issue with that. And the question was whether or not, I think it would be a fairly simple matter to correct. You know, the issue is that the statute says that an article with a bond must be acted upon first before any other business is conducted.
Yeah, I think,
any other
I mean,
money business.
right, I think.
No, but it doesn't say that. It says before any other business
other
other
business.
than the election of town offices and any zoning amendments.
I think we're pretty well established that we're not gonna go to a bond. We're gonna go to a bank.
And I understand that.
I mean,
The,
all putting that article first would do would be to give us a glimmer of an opportunity to go bond if something amazing happens.
it just is a procedural matter. It would just keep everything according to Hoyle. If you felt there was a need to, there may not be, but it would be a simple matter for somebody to, in a point of order, ask the town meeting to ratify the order of articles as published in the warrant. And then that, and specifically to move Article 4, you know, beyond Article 3. That would, I think, constitute acting upon Article 4. And if I made that clear or not.
Article 4 is the library.
Article 4 is the library, Article 3 is to change the purpose of the capital reserve fund.
Right.
And it's logical that you change the wording of the capital reserve fund first before you went on to the library article.
Right.
I understand the logic, it's just there's a statute out there that says we have to act upon a bond issue, or we have to act upon a money matter first before we do anything else.
That is a money matter.
No, if it's a bond, I can see the need.
Bond or
But if
notes?
it's just a money issue, we didn't consider that changing of the wording in the capital reserve fund to be a money issue.
It's not
It
the way
is.
the statute reads.
They disabused us of it not being a money or issue. They said, yeah, you have to have a 2/3 vote of the town because it's a money issue. That's what my understanding from DRA was. So that's why it has that condition on it.
I simply pointing out that the way the statute reads, it says that any article for, more than $100,000 in bonds or notes has to be dealt with first, has to be acted upon first.
So your suggestion is to ratify the list, and that constitutes an action?
That's correct.
Okay.
That's
what you're
correct.
saying.
And
Not
that's,
changing the order, just,
I don't seek to add any confusion to the town meeting. I just don't want any possibility that an article could pass and then subsequently be rejected on a procedural matter. That's my only concern.
So I think, and I'll ask you this, but our whole warrant was given to DRA, and they've approved that whole warrant that we've given them. So, yeah, maybe you're right, we'll just do a procedural move.
I don't think it's complicated.
Because I would have thought they'd pick it up if it were a real big issue.
Diane had a conversation with DRA later on Friday that I thought she was going to bring up to you people before the meeting, but
You want me to grab her?
I'm not certain there's anything she could inform us of that we don't already know. I mean, I think it's between the four of us to figure this out.
yep.
Yeah.
So, yeah, we have another whack at it next Tuesday.
Yeah.
Yes, we do.
So,
Yes, we do.
Whack away at it.
Yes, we do. And you can check with the various people
Right.
between them. That's fine.
so,
Yeah.
and thanks for staying on it. I mean, I think it's,
We're gonna have, I think next Tuesday, we'll probably
bring your
compose,
sleeping bag.
compose our presentation. I mean, because there's a lot of other information that has to go forward, so I think it's not gonna be as if we're just gonna throw one thing like the movement of a
Right.
warrant article out there.
Yep.
How it seemed to be some sort of government subterfuge.
As I
Although it
said,
seems like that. to
I
some
don't
people
seek to
anyway.
cause any more confusion than we'll encounter anyway.
Are we all set?
So,
If there's no more public business, I move we go into non-public RSA 91-A32A to conduct a performance review.
And I'll second that.
Roll call, Wood, yes?
Marcus, yes?
all yes.
Thank you, folks.
Thanks for playing.
Good time was had by all, right?